Let's bring in Mick Mulvaney now, Sky News contributor. He is the former Trump White House Chief of Staff, and it is good to talk to you. Mick, thank you so much for your time this morning. Look, it's not going to overshadow the events of the day, but I'll just start off with your reaction to that. The last action by the former President Biden was to pardon some very controversial figures in Fauci, in Milley, and the J6 committee. What do you make of that?
Yeah, Peter, good morning. You're right. It won't overshadow the day, but it's going to drive discussion in Washington, D.C. for some time to come. You've not even mentioned yet the precedential value of that. Joe Biden, in the last hour, I think, just pardoned his entire family. You can imagine now that Donald Trump is going to do the same thing. And in traditional Trump fashion, will try and one-up Joe Biden by pardoning the Trump family and everybody else who may have worked for his administration. It's going to set a terrible precedent in terms of building and developing faith in the institution of the federal government with ordinary Americans. But from a legal perspective, it's a fascinating question because it's not entirely clear that prospective pardons work. The way that we've always worked pardons in this country is that you have to be tried and found guilty in order to be then pardoned. There's one exception, and it's a very important exception, is Richard Nixon, who was pardoned proactively by Gerald Ford back in 1973. And the country was so eager, 74, I think, the country was so eager to sort of get that behind it, it didn't challenge it. But I think there may end up being legal challenges to whether or not Joe Biden can do what he did. And keep in mind, interestingly enough, the pardon for Dr. Fauci, for example, begins January of 2014. That's 6 years before COVID, so it's unclear as to why that is the start date. Long story short, I know I'm probably too late for that already. You have not heard the last of these pardon stories.
Oh, no. I mean, and he was, as I was just talking about with Kosher a short time ago, I mean, he was asked about this when he was signing in those cabinet appointments a short time ago, but he kept it respectful. But you would have thought that, you know, it will be a full-throated response eventually once all of these events of today are over. He'll get stuck into it.
And there's a fascinating wrinkle, which is, okay, let's say they're valid. And let's say a court determines that you can do these type of proactive pardons. That doesn't mean you can't have congressional hearings. Jim Jordan, for example, the Judiciary Committee here in Washington and the House could have hearings anyway. They're not criminal hearings. They're investigatory hearings to try and find out what happened. And none of the people that received pardons, Dr. Fauci on an investigation to COVID, for example, won't be able to invoke their Fifth Amendment privileges against self-incrimination because they can't be charged with anything, at least at the federal level. So it is going to be a truly intricate sort of analysis. Joe Biden has done some things here in the last hour that will have repercussions for future administrations for generations to come.
Yeah, and Kosher said this too. So, and you just said that too, not at federal level, but perhaps state level.
Yeah, that's the way it works, is the president can't pardon against state level. So if I'm Anthony Fauci and I get called to a congressional hearing and they ask me what I knew about gain of function on COVID, can I still invoke my Fifth Amendment privileges because I might be charged by the state of Florida? This is going to go on for years in the courts. It's going to be fascinating to watch, but it's important because it is one of the broadest sweeping powers that our presidents have. We typically don't treat presidents here like kings. One of the exceptions, in fact, with a very rare exceptions, is on this pardon power, which up till now has been perceived as being nearly unlimited, but I think we're going to find out if that's the case.